Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers lost 123 to 116 to the Golden State Warriors to drop to 46 and 30. They fall from number 3 in the West to number 4 in the West. This was, let's say, a disappointing loss, especially with some of the ways that Golden State attacked the Lakers on both sides of the ball. We will get into that. I think there are some things that we can look at and say it was just maybe Golden State specific or specific to tonight's game. There's also some things that I think are some recent trends and also some real weaknesses and flaws and deficiencies with this Lakers group that Golden State exposed tonight. But before we get into it, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to comment, subscribe, like, all that stuff. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'm flustered here to start. I got a lot of thoughts from this game. But before I get into it, shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Britton, Bloodhound, Kevin Cambridge, BC, Jay Note, Mixelflix, Natalia, Xavier. Shout out to all of you. So Buha's big picture. Let's get into it here. My big picture takeaway is tonight is the blueprint of how to beat the Lakers. And for those of you who heard my most recent mailbag, my most recent episode of Buha's Block, there was a question in there that I found very interesting that was essentially asking me how would I game plan against the Lakers. And if you go back and listen, a lot of what I said is exactly what the Warriors did tonight. And I'm not saying that the Warriors went listened to that and applied that, but I think it's just, if you scout the Lakers and you are aware of the Lakers, you know some of the ways to attack them. And defensively, it's switch everything and force them into isolations and mismatch hunting and stagnating. That's exactly what Golden State did. They switched everything. Lakers tried to attack Quentin Post in the first quarter, couldn't get by him. We're struggling with that. And they really disrupted LA's offense, particularly in that first half. It got much better in the second half, but at that point, Golden State had already created a double-digit advantage. And then offensively against LA, you need to push the ball in transition and in early offense. And then within the half court, constantly be moving, testing their defense, targeting Luka, targeting Austin, crashing the offensive glass, exposing them when they're in smaller lineups. And that's exactly what Golden State did to a T. So I'm not saying this is like some revelatory thing necessarily, but in terms of the exact ways to attack the Lakers, Golden State basically checked every box tonight. And I think if the Lakers do not win the championship this season, if they end up losing in round 1 or round 2 or the conference finals or the finals, whichever team beats them will do some combination of these things. And there will be other things that they do well that, I think Golden State's 3-point shooting tonight, their ability to get to the free throw line, and certainly like there are some Golden State specific things in terms of their ability to play small and just the chaos that Steph creates offensively. But with the way that the Lakers have formed their identity post Luka trade, I think, again, defensively, you need to switch a lot and mitigate some of LA's advantage creation and force them into being a jump shooting team. That's exactly what Golden State did tonight. Also, put a certain level of attention on LeBron and Luka and Austin, force the supporting cast to make plays, to make shots. Tonight, we saw with the bench, they scored a combined 7 points on 3 of 15 shooting. So that it 1 for 11 on threes. So they were testing Vando and Gabe and DFS and Jordan Goodwin and those guys weren't making shots. Even Jackson Hayes among the starters. So outside of the top 4 offensive weapons on this team, no one else was really providing much offensively. And even within that, Luka had a really rough performance, which I will be touching on with one of my takeaways. But then on the other side, I thought LA really struggled to match up with Golden State's speed and athleticism. Like there was an insane level of shot making from Golden State. So that's where I give the Lakers some grace of Podziemski hitting a 40-foot runner and banking it in right before halftime, right? He hit several contested textbook defense. He just hits a contested 3. Like there's nothing you could do about it. Steph is Steph. He's going to hit those shots. Moses Moody hit a couple of contested 3s. Even Draymond hit a couple 3s. So like with Golden State, though, you bank that in. Like they are capable of doing that. That's been their MO for a decade now. That's just how they play offense and the types of players that they have. But I felt they did a really good job of just the cutting and the movement within the half court, and then getting pushing the ball in transition, getting out in early offense opportunities. They really put the Lakers on their heels. And whenever they got to the basket, only had 36 paint points, but I thought, scored rather efficiently and actually outscored the Lakers in the paint 36-34 and made one more shot in the paint than the Lakers on the exact same amount of attempts, which for the Lakers, like you should not be taking only 33 attempts in the paint against the Warriors. That number needs to be closer to 50. So a big, but you got to give Golden State credit for their game plan and for their defense. So I thought tonight, if I am playing the Lakers the rest of this regular season or in the first round of the playoffs, I am looking at the film from this game. And of course, no other team has Steph. No other team has Draymond. So that there are limitations as to like replicating exactly what Golden State is doing. But the defense and some of the approach offensively, I think any opponent can apply to an extent, like any good opponent. And I mentioned that recently with Jason, that I think you have to put a certain level of pressure on the Lakers defense. And I think you have to be better offensively than defensively, or at least at a really high level offensively. And that's exactly how Golden State was tonight. Like you have to be good on both ends to beat the Lakers. But I think you have to have a certain level of shot making and shot creation, and Golden State clearly has that. So I'm now, to be clear, for the record, I'm not saying that I would pick Golden State in a 7-game series against the Lakers. I think the Lakers played awful for most of the evening, and they still almost won this game and still had a shot late in this game. So I don't want to say still almost won this game, but still had a shot to make it a 1-possession game. Remember that they got the steal. They were down 5. They missed the 3, and then Golden State ended up collecting the rebound, and that was basically the game. But the Lakers were still relatively right there at the end of this game, despite Luka having, in my opinion, his worst game as a Laker on both sides of the ball, and them not really getting going offensively until the second half when they were already down by double digits and just could not get a rebound, could not stop fouling. So with all that, the Lakers were still right there. So I think that is something that is encouraging for LA if you want to look for a silver lining, I guess. But Golden State did a lot of what I think a smart team will do against the Lakers. And this needs to be a learning lesson for the Lakers in terms of really digesting this film, digesting the game plan, and figuring out better counters. And after the game, JJ talked to us for 3 minutes. He answered, I believe, 5 questions. And he was a little bit testy with some of his responses. And he got asked about the switching offense. And he said he was not surprised that they were ready for it and expected it. And they clearly, I mean, they might have expected it, but they were not ready for it tonight. So that's my high level takeaway tonight is just, I think this is the way you attack the Lakers. And again, if it's the Warriors, OKC, Boston, whatever team ends up knocking the Lakers out of the playoffs, if they get knocked out, I think they're going to apply a lot of the principles from tonight. Notable performers, I have to start with LeBron. I thought this was his best It was a slow start for sure. Looking at it at halftime, I got the old school box score here. He only had 8 points at halftime on 2 for 4 shooting. I thought he was a bit passive in the first half, but he finished the game with 33 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists. There's something about the blue and gold that brings out the best in LeBron. Played 40 minutes tonight, 10 of 15 shooting, 5 of 8 on threes, 8 of 9 at the free throw line. Played bully ball in the second half, had 14 points in the third quarter, and I believe had 8 in the fourth quarter. So he was, he had more. He had 11 in the fourth quarter. He was awesome tonight. I thought defensively he was locked in. There was a couple of possessions late. There was the one play late where Steph got the handoff from Draymond. I thought LeBron could have done a better. He didn't even contest it. Could have done a better job closing out there. But aside from that, I thought he was pretty good defensively and was active and like he just loves playing the Warriors and they bring out the best in him. Austin had 31 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Similar to LeBron, had a slow start, only had 11 points through the first 3 quarters, then dropped 20 in the fourth, including hitting 6 threes, 6 of his 9 threes. So he had a weird game because he scored 9 points in the first quarter, didn't score in the second quarter, and then scored 2 points scored 2 points in the second quarter, didn't score in the third, and then dropped 20 in the fourth, including hitting all those crazy threes late in the game. So it was a little bit of a deceptive 31 because 31 is 31, but it was a very backloaded 31 as the game was beginning to be out of reach, and he just kept making shot after shot. But 10 of 20 shooting, 9 of 16 on threes. Then you had Rui, 24 points, 6 rebounds. I thought he did a good job of punishing mismatches, of cutting along the baseline, cutting into space in the middle of the paint. And I thought he hit 3 threes, and I think he's looked much better against the Warriors compared to like where he was a couple years ago in that 2023 series. And then Luka, I will be touching on him with one of my takeaways. At first glance, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Like he did still find ways to contribute, but 6 of 17 shooting, 0 for 6 on threes. He did not make a 3-pointer for the first time since April 7th, 2023. So we're going on almost exactly 2 years since the last time Luka did not make a 3 in a game. Did go 7 for 7 at the free throw line, but I thought for parts, especially in the first half, was just foul hunting. And I think this has become a bit of a bad habit for Luka, where he's gotten a pretty good whistle with the Lakers. And I think he's gotten used to getting some calls. And basically, anytime he doesn't get a call, he's going to be chirping at the refs and kind of getting into it with them. But on nights he's not getting as many calls, I think you start to see him get more animated and upset. And it starts to affect him getting back on defense and just his shot selection. And like, I thought after a bit, he started to get even a little passive by his standards tonight. And then defensively, they relentlessly targeted him. I would love to know how many times he was isolated tonight, because it really reminded me of the Austin game in Dallas when they targeted him. I want to say it's like 15, 17 times, something like that, which was like the most a player had been targeted this season. Then the Lakers went and targeted Al Horford a bunch of times. I think that might have broke that record. And then I don't know how many times Luka was targeted tonight, but it was a lot. And it felt like basically every possession he was out there. And even if it ended up going away from him, like at some point in the possession, he was out there isolated against Steph, against Jimmy, against Pods. So a really rough night for Luka. I think it was easily his worst game as a Laker. And to his credit, he took accountability after the game, owned the loss, said it was unacceptable and he needs to be better. And then nothing really off the bench. Like I thought Gabe had a good defensive game outside of, he started to get targeted a bit with Kuminga. They were finding ways to get him with like duck-ins and seals and stuff, post-ups, Jimmy a couple times too. But like, I thought in the first half, he held up well in some of those mismatches and switches, and didn't shoot well. But like, I thought Gabe's defense, at least I wanted to acknowledge, but otherwise it was a pretty rough performance for just about everybody else. Like Vando came in, it was his birthday. grabbed 7 rebounds. I thought was useful there, but certainly nothing to really highlight with the bench performance tonight. And then stat of the night for me is going to be, there's 2. One is 31 free throw attempts for Golden State, and that was the 8th most on the season for them. So not steady. Like they had one game they shot 50 free throws, then another one they shot 41, but eighth most in they played 76 games, so that is in that top 10, 90th percentile or so in terms of free throw attempts for them. And they made 26 of them, shot 84%. And Steph got to the free throw line 14 times. And then the other one was they had 14 offensive rebounds, leading to 23 second chance points. So both teams had 14 offensive rebounds, but LA only had 15 second chance points. So Golden State, they win this game by 7, and they have an 8-point edge in second chance points. And that right there is the game, to say nothing of the turnovers or the free throw shooting or the threes or whatnot. So LA, in my opinion, felt like every time they got within single digits, or even there was a couple points, 8 points, 5 points, they either fouled or they gave up an offensive rebound that eventually led to a score. And they really just could not get those momentum. They could not get multiple possessions in a row of momentum. They really struggle with that. Like maybe they'd get like 2, and then for that third one, which would be the possession to really get them back into the game, to make it a single digit game, they just couldn't do it. So I thought that was ultimately the difference in this game. Like blueprint to beating the Lakers aside, they were right there. They just could not get a defensive rebound to save their life, and they couldn't stop fouling. Then takeaway number 1 for me, I've already alluded to it, but this was Luka's worst game as a Laker. I mean, we could look at the shooting, 6 of 17, not making a 3. We can look at the defensive side, where he was relentlessly targeted by Steph Curry, Pods, Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga. Like everybody had their turn targeting Luka and taking him off the dribble. And I think with Luka, like he's largely fit in defensively from a team perspective because he is a big wing and he's got really good anticipation. He entered tonight averaging the 3rd most steals per game in the NBA. So like from a processing defensive playmaking standpoint, he is a good defensive playmaker. And I think within a team scheme, he can be a useful team defender. But on the ball, there's obviously a limitation there in terms of foot speed. And I think he's been better in certain matchups of angling off a ball handler and funneling them to help, but not tonight. I thought he really struggled. Like Steph, if you go, like I sometimes will watch like the quick NBA 10-minute summary of the game just to make sure that like I take a bunch of notes, but like I want to just make sure there's nothing that I'm forgetting from the course of the game. And it was like every time Steph was getting to the rim, basically, and I know it's the highlights, but within the highlights of Steph made baskets at the rim, basically every time was off of an ISO or attacking Luka off the dribble. And so I know people are going to talk about the offense. Like Luka's had some inefficient offensive performances. There's going to be some nights where the shot isn't falling. He still had 7 assists, just 1 turnover. Nights like tonight, okay, his shot's not falling. LeBron and Austin step up. Okay, like I mean, they still combined with the 3 of them for what, 82 points. So you take 82 points from those 3, and they had 19 assists. Like maybe a little low for what they've been putting out recently, but like from an offensive perspective, I think they were right there from like a cumulative production standpoint. To me, the bigger issue was the defense. Like he was just a glaring target for Golden State. And I don't think the Lakers really ever figured out a way to hide him. And part of that is on Luka. I think part of that is on the coaching staff, because again, to me, this reminded me of the Dallas game where they just let Austin hang out on an island and get cooked. And they just kind of let Luka hang out on an island and get cooked tonight. And I think, JJ said something before the game, and remember the context here of JJ knows the Golden State story as well as anybody, because he was with the Clippers as Golden State was rising. They had that 7-game series, and he remembers Steph and all the times Steph tortured the Clippers. So he said pregame that like his biggest concern was that when Steph hits a couple shots, teams start to overreact and they start to send too much defensive attention. And all of a sudden, that's when you see Golden State starts to hit you with the backdoor cuts, the split cuts, and guys get layups, and it just like they space you out and they just shred your defense. So he was like, no matter what, we have to stick with the game plan. And Steph's going to hit shots because Steph is Steph. He's 1-1, but we cannot overreact to Steph making a certain shot and compromise our defensive game plan. So it feels like from that perspective, they were trying to remain disciplined within how they wanted to guard Steph, but the switch everything and just like hope that the on-ball guy can keep Steph in front of that player. It just did not work tonight, especially with Luka as the primary guy. So I think in addition to what I mean, and this is part of what I was saying earlier with like the blueprint to beat the Lakers, I think part of it is targeting Luka and Austin, and Golden State did that very effectively tonight. And the Lakers have to have a better counter. And they tried to, like when Kevon Looney was out there, they put Luka on Looney, and they tried to be like, okay, if you want to put Kevon Looney in, as the screener, we're not afraid of him. But still, it was like they didn't care. They're like, okay, we're gonna keep bringing Luka's guy into the action, regardless of if it's post, if it's Buddy Hield, if it's Santos. Like it didn't matter who it was. They were bringing Luka into the action, and sometimes they had decoy actions to like fake, like one guy was going to come screen, and then another guy would come off of screen, bringing Luka into the action. So like they were relentless with it, and they effectively targeted him tonight. And it is something that the Lakers are going to have to address moving forward, because I don't see Luka struggling like this offensively, but the defense, if you're targeting him on the ball and you're testing his point of attack skills, again, I think this was maybe an exception as to like the worst he's looked in those settings. But if I'm a team watching this, like I'm going to do that again. So I think the Lakers got to figure out a way to handle that a bit better. And speaking of the defense, my takeaway number 2 is the defense is really starting to worry me. And I know people are talking about the offense, and I've seen a lot of the comments and on X, and I know people are talking about the bench and people talking about Dalton not playing. But if you want to like zoom out and look at, in my opinion, like what the biggest concern from this game was, like forget even the blueprint. Maybe Golden State is one of the few teams that could actually do the blueprint, right? And maybe it is OKC, Boston, Golden State. There's like 3 or 4 teams that can even execute like this against the Lakers and really test them in these ways. So, I mean, that is concerning, but like it's not in every matchup concern. My every matchup concern is like the Lakers have not looked good defensively now for quite a while. And they did look good against Houston, but I also don't really believe in Houston's offense. So part of me is like, and remember in that game, they benched basically, they benched Jalen Green for most of the fourth quarter. They benched Şengün for a good chunk there of the fourth quarter. They were going with more wing heavy defensive lineups. So like those groups just couldn't really score. So I do give the Lakers defense credit. I'm not going to discredit what they did defensively in that game, but like I think Golden State versus Houston is 2 totally different beasts. And just looking at the recent defensive performances, it's like the Chicago game, the Orlando game, the Indiana game, the Chicago game again, and the Memphis game. I thought for the most part, those were all poor defensive performances, like ranging from subpar to bad. And then now you could throw the Golden State game into that. So we're looking at a stretch here of essentially since LeBron and Rui came back, that is 6 out of 7 games. I would say the Lakers have been at best subpar defensively. And in several of these games have been like bad to atrocious. Tonight, I would say is more of a bad defensive game. I wouldn't say it was quite atrocious. But obviously the first Chicago loss was atrocious. I thought parts of that Orlando game were atrocious. Indiana, that's partly just how they play, like very fast tempo, that they're a really good offense. I mean, the fourth quarter of the second Chicago loss was atrocious. And then the Memphis game, you know, that there were parts of that game that were pretty rough. Like they got up 50-30 and then they completely let go of the rope. So part of this has been a focus thing. Part of this has been like reintegrating LeBron and Rui. And I understand that and I get that. But if we also look at some of these teams, it's like Chicago, Orlando, Indiana, Chicago, Memphis, Houston, Golden State. Like Golden State stands out. Yes, that's an elite playoff offense that I trust. Outside of that, I know Chicago's been playing well. I know, like Indiana's a good offense, so I will give them that. Like Memphis and Houston, I don't believe in their playoff offenses personally. Chicago, I think there's some limitations there. Like they're, depending on where they finish in the standings, I think they're a first round and out team. Orlando, similar. So like these aren't like world beating offenses, basically is my point. They're about to play one in OKC twice, and we'll see how OKC approaches those games in terms of taking one seriously, taking both seriously. Even when they don't take games seriously, they still are competitive because of their depth and their firepower. And it would be very Lakers to like beat the full strength Thunder and then like lose to the shorthanded Thunder. That would be like the most Lakers thing ever. Then they got the at Dallas game where all the emotions with Luka, then Houston again, which could determine top 4 seed there for both teams. So I think from an offense perspective, that they're not really facing another elite offense necessarily outside of OKC, but with those 2 games, but like they probably are going to play, unless they get Memphis in round 1, they're probably going to play a pretty good offense or at least an offense that can test their defense. And I'm starting to grow concerned with the defense. Like I think it's been enough of a stretch here where I just don't think it looks at the same level. And I think also like Jackson has not been playing as well. And then to compound matters, with Jackson not playing as well, like the leash with him has been so short, where tonight Jackson once again played 15 minutes. So you had the Memphis game, he played 17. The Houston game, he played 14. Tonight, 15. So like against serious teams, like those are 3 serious teams. The Lakers could play any of those teams technically in round 1 or round 1 or 2. Jackson is basically not like he's playing placeholder starter minutes. So JJ is kind of showing his hand in terms of like who he trusts and how much he trusts them. And he has not played another big in those games. So he's gone small, and it's been a lot on these small ball looks, and the results have been rather mixed. And I just think at this point, we have about almost a 2-week sample of this defense not looking that good. And again, Houston being the exception, where I think there's some important context to that matchup. And I don't know. This is my bigger concern kind of coming out of this stretch here, is like, I just don't think the defense has looked good for a while, pretty much since before LeBron got injured. And LeBron got injured on March 8th. We are now on April 4th. So outside of like looking at the past month, how many good defensive performances can we really say the Lakers have had? It's not been many. And again, part of that, Rui was out, LeBron was out. So I'm not going to hold them to that standard necessarily when those guys are out. But it's now been quite a bit since the Lakers have looked like the elite defense they were from mid-January into early March. And as the playoffs are 6 games away, that's a bit of a concern for me. And then takeaway number 3, before we get into the Q&A, I touched on it with the notable performers, but I think this is the best LeBron has looked post-injury. This is the first time he has led. It was the first time he's led the Lakers in scoring since coming back from the injury. Just the second time he's led them in assists since the injury. So slow start with the first half, but I thought in the second half he got back to playing bully basketball. I thought the finishing looked better. I thought the jumper looked better. He hit 5 threes, which his 3-point shot had not been falling recently. He took Draymond off the dribble several times. He was scoring against Moody and Kuminga and Jimmy and like Steph. He targeted Steph a lot and was able to post him up and create some advantages with skip passes and back cuts for Rui and Vando and Austin. So like I think this was back to LeBron looking more like himself on both sides of the ball. So if you want to take a second silver lining, other than like LA not having a good game and still being relatively close down the stretch here, I think it would be LeBron looking more like himself. And like, this is the type of LeBron the Lakers are going to need. And if you get like a closer to an average Luka performance with this version of LeBron, with Austin going off in the fourth, you potentially win this game, right? Or maybe it goes to like overtime. Like it's a much more competitive game down in crunch time rather than LA making these like pseudo comebacks and then Golden State would always have an answer. So this one I'll keep relatively short because I already touched on LeBron a bit, but like I just think from an actual what could we could take away from this game from like a positive perspective, I think LeBron, if this is a bit of a breakthrough in terms of him getting back to the level he was at pre-injury, like that dude was first team All-NBA candidate, MVP, back end of the ballot candidate. Like he was playing remarkable basketball. So I think if he can get back to that, that is something that can offset some of the defensive concerns and just make the Lakers look like a more formidable team and more so like they did pre-injury. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Let's see, we got a few super chats. First one from Gorilla. What can JJ do to help get Luka going when he's off? So one interesting thing with Luka tonight was like he was actually 6 for 11 on twos, and I felt like his finishing was solid tonight. Like he had several layup finishes through traffic. He had that offensive rebound late that he hit, grabbed the offensive rebound over Draymond, hit the little jumper. So like he was hitting these like little jumpers within like 8-10 feet. And it was really just the 3-point shot. In terms of getting him going, like I think you want to create, really for any player, if your jumper's not going, sometimes you just need to see the ball go through the basket and get a layup, get an easy play, get a back cut, something like that. So I think the Lakers can do a better job of manufacturing some easy offense for him. It does seem like he is, I don't want to say a streaky player because he is pretty consistent overall, but like there's maybe a little bit of streakiness to his jumper. And like some nights he's really hot, some nights it's just not falling. This seemed to be one of those nights. But I think that the biggest thing, in my opinion, is just helping him out defensively, and whether that's doing more pre-switching, scram switching. So basically like, especially depending on, and this is what's tough with Golden State because Golden State has so much movement and it's harder to game plan for this against them compared to the average offense. But for example, if let's say they're playing Memphis and Luke Kennard's out there, and the Lakers are like, we're going to hide Luka on Luke Kennard because Luke Kennard's not really a screener and he's more just like a spot up guy. So you're kind of forcing him into a position of just out of his comfort zone. So let's say Ja has the ball on the left wing and Luke Kennard's in the right corner. If you see Luke Kennard beelining to Ja Morant to go screen for him, someone else can pick up that assignment along the way, and Luka can switch on to that player's offensive player, and then they can try, they could reset and try to do that again. But now you're stalling their offense. You're kind of getting them out of rhythm. That they're wasting the shot clock, and that's something that we've seen. Like Houston was doing this with Şengün late in the Houston win, where they were trying to pre-switch or scram switch depending on the context of how things are going offensively. But they were trying to keep Şengün out of the screening actions as much as possible. And the Lakers, like, there's one play that I've referenced now a couple times where Gabe basically like runs in a circle to drag Şengün into the action, because it was like, there's no way you're hiding from this. We are bringing you into this. And so I think the Lakers could do a little bit better job with that. Again, I talked about like them switching Luka onto different guys to try to prevent, the primary guys kind of being in the action. But I think Golden State did a really good job with targeting him. Kerwin, thank you for the super chat. I wouldn't mind trading Vando along with our first round pick for someone that could play on both ends of the floor. All right, we're getting into trade questions here. Excuse me. I hear you. I think the one thing with Vando that I've talked about at the trade deadline is he is a bit of a polarizing figure across the league. I think a lot of people are very skeptical of his offensive capabilities. I think if you're in the weeds with the Lakers, like many of you are, about Vando's short roll playmaking and his ball handling and some of the decision making that he could do offensively, where obviously the shot, like there might be a game where he makes one or he makes two, or he gets some offensive rebound putbacks, some back cuts. He had that cut along the baseline tonight, but there's clearly a limitation there offensively. And at least in the conversations I've had, I have not surveyed every GM or front office executive, but at least in the conversations I've had, people outside the Lakers seem to be lower on Vando than the Lakers are. So I think there's a little bit of a gap there in terms of how people perceive him versus how the Lakers perceive him. And that is a factor. So my only point with stating that is, even I think Vando with a first round pick, I think it probably gets you less than you would think it would get you, especially when looking at, he's got 3 more years left. So he's got, like, if it was an expiring or maybe like 2 years left, I think that's a little bit of a different story, but that is long-term double-digit money, still low double digits, but with the new CBA and the first apron, second apron, and the way that people are trying to be cost effective and careful with just spending that type of money, like I think you're going to see moving forward role players start to get squeezed, where it's almost going to turn more into like the haves and the have-nots, where if you are a star or like a high level starter, you'll make over a certain amount. And if you're not, you will make probably single digits or at most kind of around that like $10-12 million range. So I think that could be something they explore this offseason potentially. But I think if you had an idea of like the actual return for that, you might be reconsidering or kind of turned off to the point where you're like, okay, let's just keep Vando, because what you could actually get for Vando plus the first is not really going to move the needle in the way you think it potentially could by attaching that first. Christian, thank you for the super chat. We can't have our bench not contribute offensively and have Luka underperform offensively. That is just asking to lose the ball game. Yeah, it is one of those things where I think if I just told you the Lakers' 4 leading scorers tonight scored 33, 31, 24, and 19, like Luka being the 4th leading scorer and having the shooting night he did, of course, is problematic. I'm not denying that. But if you swapped Luka and Rui's stat lines from an offensive perspective, at least from like a scoring perspective, and Luka had 24 points on 9 of 15 shooting, and Rui had 19 points on 6 of 17 shooting, like my point is, like, I think the offense was largely fine tonight. It got off to a slow start. Like, it got off to a good start. Then they had like a 6-minute stretch where they barely scored, and they certainly can be better against switching defenses. I'm not saying that they can't. I contend, in my opinion, the defense was a much bigger problem tonight. The defense is the bigger problem moving forward. And I don't think DFS is going to miss 5 like semi-open to open threes in many games. Gabe 1 for 5. Okay, like he can be a bit streaky with his shooting, though he has been shooting well for going on over 3 months. Vando 0 for 1. Okay, like that's to be expected. But to your point, like you do want more from the bench. I'm not absolving the bench here. Like 7 points from this group is, you need at least like 15 minimum. I think that's like should be the floor, and probably closer to like 20 would be ideal, like realistically, just based on like there is something to LA brings defensive minded guys off the bench. If they really wanted to load the bench with scoring, they'd bring Rui off the bench, right? Or they'd bring Austin off the bench and be like, okay, we need a bench scorer. But they're not doing that. They are starting Rui. They're starting Austin. So I don't have high expectations for DFS, Gabe, Vando, and Jordan Goodwin. Like, again, I think 15 points, 20. Like, sure, they've had nights where they've shot the ball really well. But for the most part, DFS is a guy 8 to 12 points, 6 to 12 points. Like, that's kind of what I expect. Gabe, similar range. And if they give you anything more than that, it's gravy. So I think, like, again, 15 to 20 points is about realistic, but 7 is far below that. That's about half of the floor. So I'm not, like, to be clear, I'm not saying they had a good offensive performance. I think there's a lot of things that could have been better, but I personally put more on the defense and their inability to rebound, their inability to protect the rim, their inability to guard the 3-point line. I've been talking about their 3-point defense for weeks. Like, that's just not been good for a while. They fouled so much tonight, in part because of Golden State's speed and offense and movement and their inability to contain that. So there was a lot to, in my opinion, like, take away from the defensive side more than the offensive side, because I think the Lakers have a lot of work to do defensively. Offensively, still a decent amount of work to do. Like, they're a work in progress right now, but I think the offense, they still generated a bunch of good looks. There were some just missing shots tonight, but defensively, I think the fouling and the rim protection, the rebounding, like, that stuff, I think is a little more sticky in terms of actual concerns. Then next one from Mitch Mitchell. Thank you for the super chat. I was there, first NBA game. This was a good game for LeBron with the turnovers, and failed pass attempts. I think he passed to a ghost in the fourth quarter. So LeBron had 4 turnovers. At this point, I think it's kind of to be expected. Like, he's typically going to be in the 3 to 5 turnover range. You kind of live with that. But I mean, I would say 33 points on 10 to 15 shooting. If you want to just pinpoint the passing and the decision making with that, like I guess you can criticize that. But I think after a relatively underwhelming first half, I thought the second half was much better. So was it LeBron's best game? No, like I still think that there's another level he can get to physically, and he has not quite looked like himself physically. But I thought the second half he looked better. He looked more explosive. I thought he got downhill quicker and easier, and he was finishing better. Because one thing I've talked about recently is like he's been blowing a lot of layups, a lot of point blank shots. Tonight he had several reverse layup finishes. Interestingly, like on drive, so it wasn't even necessarily like a reverse layup, but he just decided to flip it in with his right hand on the left side. But the decision making could be better. I'm not saying it can't, but I think if we're going to nitpick other, like if we're going to criticize people, I think LeBron is lower on the list in my opinion off of tonight's game. But that's awesome that you were there for your first game. That was a result aside, that was a fun game. That there was a lot of, you saw Steph, LeBron, Lakers, Warriors. J.R. Madrano, thank you for the super chat. Felt like a game that showed the Lakers' incompleteness roster-wise. Once the Lakers address the needs this offseason, they can shapeshift into any matchup. Just got to work with what we have. I think this is a good perspective. And look, the thing too is like every team has flaws. There are flaws with the Celtics, with the Thunder, with the Cavs, with the Nuggets, with the Warriors. Like every team has their flaws. So when I say the blueprint, it's not like that. Like every team has a blueprint to how to beat them. Every team has weaknesses. Every team has deficiencies. So my larger point was, I think Golden State did a good job exploiting what the Lakers' incompleteness is, what the Lakers' deficiencies and flaws are, and some of this group's limitations. So that's more so the point I was trying to make, and I think you are making that here too. And I think everything is a data point to move forward with. And for the Lakers, you take the film from this, you take the numbers from this, you learn from it, and you move forward and hope you can make some progress in some of these categories and some of these areas. Because again, like transition in early offense and offensive rebounding and struggling against switching, like these are things we've talked about at various points this season. These are especially things we've talked about the last couple of months post Luka trade, as this team has remade their roster. So it's not surprising that they struggle with all these things. I just think it's kind of a testament to Golden State and their execution, that they were able to execute at such a high level for so long. And just like the Lakers could not string together momentum changing sequences, Golden State was able to. And Golden State kind of always had an answer to any run that the Lakers had. So I think in some ways it's more so a praise of Golden State tonight than anything. But I think this is a lesson for the Lakers. And again, depending on like who, they could still win the championship, they could still have a deep playoff run. I'm not saying it's not possible. So I want to be clear with that. But if they do lose potentially earlier than expected, it's probably going to be for several of the reasons I've already mentioned. And that's going to be, I think, something that they have to consider when looking at how they build their roster this summer. Adam, thank you for the super chat. Turnovers cost the game, especially from Luka and LeBron. I mean, Luka only had one, so he did have a costly one. But, I mean, Lakers only had 8 turnovers. So I hear you. I think they had some untimely turnovers and some costly turnovers, but it's harder to take care of the ball better than 8 turnovers. So, that's about, like, the Lakers have actually been taking care of the ball pretty well recently. But I hear, like, it has been a problem for both players respectively throughout the course of LeBron, like this season, and then Luka since he's been a Laker. So I don't disagree with that. Fang Charlie, Thanks again for the pod the other day. It was so much fun, and I was glad to see. I was glad to get your views to Chinese fans, but lots of chat trolling today. SMH. Thank you for the super chat. It's to be expected. I know, of course, there's some Lakers Warriors beef, and some people are upset right now, but we're moving past it. All right, I'm gonna go. I'll go about 10 more minutes. You guys got questions in the chat? Jay, 10 more minutes equals 3 hours. Well, it is a front end of a back-to-back, so I'm going to have another late night tonight, and I still got to write, so I will actually I will do my best to hold it to 10, but you guys know me. I will probably go longer. Connor Phillips says another 3 hours. Britain, Jovan, random question, but when was the last time you received an autograph or something of that sort from a player? Probably have to go back to early high school. I got an autograph from Vladimir Radmanovich, or Vladrad. I know people, but like saying it the right way. Vladimir Radmanovich. He was at a local Serbian church that we would sometimes go to for Serbian Easter and different Serbian holidays. So he was there signing autographs, and I got this was probably, I guess I would have been maybe like, it would have been, I think 2008. So I would have been 15, 16. And yeah, so that I would say that was the last time I got one. Otherwise, yeah, not since then. Like definitely not in college. I know I went to a Knicks Grizzlies game freshman year of college in New York, my first game at MSG, and I got to meet some of the players after, but we just took photos. Like I have a photo with Marc Gasol and a couple other people, but the last time I got like an autograph, I would say it was probably sophomore, maybe junior year of high school, but it's been a while. I will say this, Jay says refs kind of hate LeBron and Luka. I did feel, and again, you guys know I don't like to blame the refs, but I did think there was some interesting calls tonight against the Lakers. Now, again, my default stance is like the refs are human, they're imperfect. I also think the Lakers typically get a fair whistle, and they typically get a lot of free throws. So I'm not going to sit here and like blame the refs or whatnot, but I did feel like they got a couple of challenges that were overturned, and there was one time where Steph kicked the ball out of bounds, but then they ruled that the Lakers kicked it. Then they showed the replay, and it was like clear it was Steph kicked it. There was another one where the ball went out of bounds. Draymond clearly hit it out, but then they still gave the ball to the Warriors. They scored on that play. So like there were just these little possessions that like kept going in Golden State's favor that I felt like it was an oddly reffed game, I will say, from that perspective. But I think the Lakers did foul them a lot. So that's where like Austin fouled Steph in the corner in front of the Warriors bench. I forgot. I think it was Kuminga got Jackson on a head fake. So like Lakers did far too much fouling tonight. But I think in some of like the 50-50 plays in terms of out of bounds or different things, they seem to be going the Warriors' way when like they would immediately show the replay on the Jumbotron, and it was like clearly not off of a Laker or whatever. Jake9, hello Jovan. What's your favorite first round matchup for the Lakers? My favorite first round matchup has to be Memphis. They are cratering right now. We just saw the Lakers beat them in Memphis. Let me pull up Memphis' schedule here quickly. They just beat the Heat tonight with Ja doing the figure gun again right after he got warned. But before that, lost to the Warriors, lost to the Celtics, lost to the Lakers, lost to the Thunder, and gave up 117 plus in all 4 games. So they haven't beaten, or I guess beating Miami now, what was their first win above against an above 500 team since early February. So I would say Memphis. Natalia says, "Don't you want a good title run though? For memories, Memphis doesn't sound good." Well, I was asked the best first round matchup or like the easiest. So I'm telling you who I think is the worst team. If you want like the highlight reel path, then it would be something probably Golden State, Denver, OKC, Boston. That's like the highlight reel. You play Steph, you play Joker, you play Shea and OKC, you play Boston. Like that's I think maybe you could throw in the Clippers instead of, but I think Lakers would want to beat Denver. Like that would be a sweet. So Clippers or Warriors. I guess you could pick between those two. But I think with Steph and LeBron and just the history there, you probably pick that one ahead of even Lakers Clippers. So I think Golden State, Denver, OKC, Boston is like, that's the championship highlight path where you feel really good about it if you beat all 4 teams. Bringing the drama with this question, who's a better player, Luka or LeBron? Well, and I assume you're saying right now, right? Because of course, like from a historical context, like LeBron is the better player. So I want to be clear with that. I think right now Luka is the better player, but I think two things like, so I think in general Luka is the better player right now, but I also think that LeBron has outplayed him in like several stretches since Luka's got there. So I would say LeBron's, in my opinion, a bit more consistent and stable. And he also carries a certain load defensively. So I think Luka's ceiling is a bit higher, at least offensively. And like, I think you need, like, I think his offensive ceiling can propel the Lakers to just a different level that I mean, I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. Like I kind of view it more of like a 1A, 1B situation. It should be Luka based on like how like Luka has been the better player for the last few years or couple years, whatever. But it's also hard to like overlook how good LeBron has been for stretches, especially like pre-injury. So I think it kind of depends on the night and the matchup to some extent. In general, I still think Luka's like the younger player and his stats in some ways have been better, but LeBron's defense, I don't know. That's tough. Craig asks, since you eat late, what's your go-to dinner? I am not the model of like how to live or how to eat because especially, I mean, like tonight I ate at the game, so I had chicken, rice, beans, tomatoes, cucumbers, flour tortilla. So I just ate whatever was there. On a non-game night, I will either make myself food, which is typically some type of meat, a steak, burgers, ground beef, chicken, or I will DoorDash something if I'm feeling a little bit lazy. Then I try to get like either a salad or some type of protein with a green. Those are like kind of my 2 go-to meal types. I do love a good burger, and that is my biggest weakness. I can have a burger for 5 times a day. Like I just I love burgers, but in terms of time, it really varies. I typically eat 7, 8 o'clock, so I don't think it's like too late. But I will snack maybe a little bit before bed, and then that's where I like to have like protein shakes or Greek yogurt or something, and then might sneak in like a little bit of candy or like a sweet or something. Dotun says, "LOL, LeBron is clearly the better player right now." I mean, he was the better player tonight. Like it's tough. Um, I mean, look, I don't want to pulling up Luka's game logs here. Okay, so I mean, yeah, it also depends like how much you factor defense. Like I think, in my opinion, especially with stars, like the high end offensive outcomes are to me like the most valuable thing, and that's where like a playoff run like Luka had last year. I don't know if this version of LeBron is capable of having that same type of output and like run offensively. I think defensively, of course, LeBron, like they're not close right now defensively, and really have not like. I mean, I think LeBron had kind of slipped a little bit the last couple of years, but like LeBron's defensive peak is still like different stratosphere compared to Luka. So I guess if you say they're within a certain distance offensively, and then a much bigger difference defensively, like that's where you can tilt toward Luka. But I also think like Luka, I don't know. It's tough. I don't have a great answer. And look, this is coming from someone who thinks like I think LeBron's the GOAT. So I'm not. There's no shade at LeBron. You know, I'm a LeBron guy. LeBron is one of my 2 or 3 favorite players of all time. I also think as Philip says here, like I think we're also talking about this after Luka just had his worst game of the season. I guess this season, if you want to look at this season, I think it. Like, look, I'll say this: I have a vote this year, and I'm considering LeBron for first team All NBA and LeBron for spot 5 on the MVP ballot. I'm not considering Luka, so I guess by my own voting process, like. Now, I know Luka missed a bunch of times, so he's not even eligible for these things anyway. But like, even if he was, I would still have LeBron ahead of him in like the awards race. So from that perspective, I guess by my own voting, like I would put LeBron ahead of him like this season. I still, what I don't like to do is like, and this is where we can get into like some of the stuff with the award stuff where like, I think sometimes there's a little bit too much of a reactionary, like I almost think there's kind of like a general ranking of where we put guys and then sort of a like who's that season. And I think like it's actually, I think worked against LeBron sometimes where like, and I think it's working against Jokic right now where for basically until like the last couple of years, LeBron has been, or last few years, whatever, LeBron has been considered the best player, but then it was like, well, but this guy's having the better season, or like, and then it's like people are talking about him as like the 5th best player or something. When in reality, we would still take LeBron number 1 if we were doing some type of draft. So I guess I'm a little bit more sensitive to like the big picture ranking, where I still think I don't want to overlook like what Luka did last year, and that I think basically having Luka as your best player, you're penciling in 50-ish wins and like a shot to his teams have always overachieved in the playoffs within series. Like I covered that series with him versus the Clippers in the bubble, and it was like The Clippers had so much more talent, but Luka single-handedly was just kicking their ass, and there's nothing they could do about it. And like, then he did it again the next year. And like, I think every playoff series he's been in, his teams have punched above their weight, in large part because of how special he's been in the playoffs. So I know like he's not in necessarily the same shape or putting up the same numbers as some of those things, but like from a totality perspective, I don't want to like underrate him from like if we were just drafting players or picking them or whatnot. But LeBron is LeBron, so I don't know. It's tough. It's a really good question. And drama, you brought the drama. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Can the Lakers get a $35+ million star player without a trade post Braun? Without a trade, yeah. They can sign someone in 2026 if Braun retires in 2026. If not, it just depends on what their cap situation looks like. But they should have in 2026 or 2027, and maybe he plays one more year. They should be well set up to sign somebody. Philip Pass has got to pay AR though. Yeah, but I believe they're supposed to have, if LeBron opts out, they're going to have like 80 something million in cap space. So you could still pay AR and pay another star. That would test your depth, obviously. And you know, you got to be careful with how you build the roster in that case. But there is a path to them keeping Luka, AR, and a star, another star post LeBron, and that being the core of the group. James Cook, thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question here. So let me know if you have a question. The Snow says, Jovan, when is the next meetup, dude? It's a good question. Looking at the schedule, it might, I don't know how you guys feel. I think really it would come down to that week of maybe leading into the playoffs. Maybe one night we go watch the play-in, one of the play-in nights somewhere. And I was considering maybe doing a poll of like a few different spots around LA and then seeing whichever spot gets the most votes. That could be an option. Otherwise, I would say once the playoffs start, it would have to be post Lakers getting knocked out. But that week leading into the playoffs is going to, assuming the Lakers are in the top 6, which I still am going to assume, I think it would have to take a disaster for them to drop out. They'll basically be off Monday through Friday, and I'll still be working and having to write and be doing several preview podcasts during the week. But like, that's about as much downtime as I'm going to have until, you know, the playoffs start. And then I'm in that until it's over. So maybe something like that Wednesday or Thursday, I think could be interesting if you guys are down. The Snow says, you mean post Lakers championship meetup? That would go crazy, LMAO. I mean, yeah, we could do that. We could do that, or we can meet up right before the playoffs, or we could do both. But let me. Nico Harrison's burner says that Furley spot last time was good vibes. We could. Marlo Martinez says, how about Spearmint Rhino for the meetup? Some of you will get that. Some of you won't. I will not expound. but I think you can figure it out. Madison, Jovan, top 5 players of all time in your opinion. Oh, you guys are gonna get me in trouble here. I mean, I think there's a clear top 3 in my opinion in LeBron, MJ, and Kareem. I think 4 and 5 get tricky. I would probably throw Magic in there, and then 5, I think it's really comes down to like, I mean, I know there's people who would argue for Russell. I know there's people that argue for Wilt, for Bird, for Kobe, for Duncan, Steph. I know technically it's my list. I think I comfortably have a top 4. After that, it is. I'd almost have to expand it to my top 10, top 15, and I can't do that. And actually, this is an aside, but kind of along the same lines. I was thinking of doing this summer top 25 Lakers of the past 25 years, and looking at starting at the 1999 to 2000 season. So basically the millennium on, and ranking the top 25 Lakers. I think that would be like a fun off-season project when we're in the doldrums of the off-season. I see. All right, now JCU asked if I got Duke winning it all. Yeah. To be completely honest, I'm not a big college basketball person. I've always just been like NBA only. But I mean, I think Cooper Flag is legit. So I would pick Duke right now. Walter White asked when will be the Asia tour. Jovan. I need to make some plans to go over there. That would be fun. I've never been to Asia. So I need to go. And I know Charlie will show me a good time. Britton, Jovan, when do you think you'll do another stream with fans? I assume you're talking about the one where I bring people up. I'm overdue for that. So certainly next week. Let me know your guys' top 5. I see Mixelflix, Braun, Jordan, Magic, Wilt, Kobe. That's pretty much. I don't. Connor says Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, Magic, Duncan. J Note says like the video, everyone. And yeah, I see a lot of Kobe talk. Look, I grew up a Kobe fan. I had Kobe shoes, so I'm, but with anytime I'm ranking, I try to be objective. I said Kobe is a candidate for that fifth spot. I would say, like, if you look at some of his advanced numbers compared to some of the other guys in this mix, he is obviously championships, all NBAs, all defenses, all that stuff. He is up there with just about anybody in this mix, but some of the advanced metrics have not been kind for him. So I certainly have him top 10, but I think whether he's 5, for me, I would really have to break this down. I don't want to give you guys like a fake answer. But he could be as high as number 5, in my opinion. I would not put him higher personally, but if you want to, then that's fine. Nico Arson's burner. Any C's you're putting over Jokic, bro? I got Wilt and Kareem, maybe Hakeem. I would put Kareem. As of right now, I would still probably put Kareem, Wilt, Russell, Shaq. I would have Jokic ahead of Hakeem, though. I know that might be controversial, but I'm not trying to ignite the chat here with the top 10 conversation. I've now had 2 questions: Luka versus LeBron, and top 5 players that have really got the chat on fire. Andres says, "What's the real Jackson? A month ago, he looked like he belonged. Now he looks unplayable. Hi from Colombia. I love your work." I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think he's a little bit matchup based, but I will say I would like to see him play a little. Like, I think his floor should be closer to 18 to 20 minutes and not. He's played under 18 minutes in 3 straight games. I would like to see that a little bit higher, but it seems to be like. Once again, I mean, I don't even. I might have mentioned it briefly. Like, Dalton didn't play tonight. JJ went just straight up 9 people. And you know, he went really heavy. I mean, LeBron played 40, Austin played 40, Luka played 38. Rui played the most he's played since the injury at 34. DFS was right there at 29. So, like, he leaned into the top 5 guys that we expect to be 30 plus minute a night guys. A little bit more minutes for Jordan Goodwin, played 14 minutes tonight. I thought he did some good things defensively and on the glass, but yeah, I mean, Goodwin actually outplayed Vando. Vando played 13 minutes. So in terms of Jackson, though, this is a Jackson question. Like, it just seems like JJ has a pretty quick leash with him. So I think Jackson's going to have to play like notably better to start playing a bit more, unless it's just like a lottery team that, which I guess would technically only be Portland and New Orleans. But OKC, I mean, they're going to need him against Dallas. I don't see how they survive against Dallas playing like that small with AD and Gafford and Lively potentially back. L.A. Jovan, do you think Jackson's played himself out of being a backup? If they upgrade the 5 in the offseason, will Jackson try to find a starting spot someplace? No, not necessarily. I still think Jackson would have utility as a backup 5. I still think this group needs 2 centers. And I think, if anything, he's probably playing himself into more of a backup role. And, you know, we were talking about him as maybe a non-taxpayer MLE guy, or like part of the non-taxpayer MLE, maybe not the full non-taxpayer MLE, but like, could he get 8 to 10 million, maybe 11 million with the way that he had been playing for around like 2 months? I think that was possible, and it's still possible. Like, if the Lakers go to the conference finals, win a championship, Jackson's their starting center, he plays better, he gets back to playing how he was up until the last like 2 weeks or so. Certainly possible, but I think it is obviously trending, not in a positive direction right now, but I don't want to overreact and like completely reassess. But I will say, based on some of the limitations that have kind of popped up over the last couple of weeks and the lack of trust there with JJ, I think it does seem like more, and even going back further, the fact that they traded for Mark Williams, and like, clearly that was a priority that they were talking about, like trying to find, like they were making it clear up until they had to make him their full-time center that they were trying to find another big man and to move him to a backup role. Like, I think they probably view him more as a backup role, or as a backup, and he has to play at a certain level, surpass those expectations to really earn the starting spot, which he can do because he's was pretty good for 2 months there. But certainly, I think JJ's trust level right now is fluctuating a bit. James Cook, do LeBron and Luka have a unique handshake yet? It's a good question. I haven't really observed that, to be completely honest. LeBron does have his handshake line with the team. I know they have a handshake. I don't know if it's unique. So I will track that and report back to you. All right. I went over the 10 minutes, of course. So I'm going to wrap here. But I appreciate you all. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. This was a fun one. We got a little controversial. And again, if you guys want to do a meetup, if you guys want me to do top 25 Lakers past 25 years, we'll do that as well. But that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back in less than 24 hours after the Lakers play the Pelicans. It is a game they should win. It is a game that maybe they'll rest someone, but after tonight's loss, I don't know if they can afford to do that. I think the better approach is play everybody and just blow out the Pelicans and rest guys by like the third quarter. So we'll see. But shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all. And I will talk to you all very soon. Lakers should have a bounce back tomorrow. So I think we'll be better spirits tomorrow. But I appreciate you all.